With water, we have a $4,000 surplus. So basically, if we pass this budget that we're going to go over in a couple of minutes, there would be no water rate increase. Now, one of the reasons why this has come out okay was mid-year we made a correction. And that mid-year correction kind of brought us into where we needed to be long-term, not just for water breaks. Because in the new budget, we're assuming some water breaks until we get certain lines fixed. So if we pass that budget, there would be no tax increase and there would be no water rate increase. Now, sewage is another matter. The way you figure out a water rate, a sewage rate, or a refuse rate is you take the expenses and you determine what revenues you need. And once you determine the revenues you need, you divide by the usage. So, based on historical data, it looks like we meter about 36 million gallons a year. Okay? So if you take the sewage expenses, which is $113,645, and you divide, excuse me, the revenues for, if you take 36 million gallons, which is 36,000 gallons, and you multiply times our current rate, and our current rate is $2.50 per thousand, okay? You come up with $96,000. When we review the budget, you'll see our SOAR expenses, which is basically what we're charged by the Allegheny Valley Joint Sewage Authority, and some other expenses that we incur because of sewage. We need $113,000. So we're coming up short $17,645. There's almost nothing you can do about that. You've got your expenses, they're kind of fixed. There's almost nothing you can cut. So if you assume that we're going to have 36 million gallons of red water, you have to divide 36 million or 36,000 thousands into $17,645. And that says we need a 49-cent rate increase in order to balance that sewer budget. So that means we got to take the $2.50 we've been charging, add 49 cents, and the sewage rate would go up to $2.99. That's a pretty hefty increase. That's 19.6%. If you want to get a feel for how that's going to affect the users, a large number of people in this community use about 2,000 gallons per quarter. So their sewer bill would have been $20 for that quarter. This 49-cent increase would increase their sewer bill to $23.92. So they would have a $3.92 increase per quarter.
Can I comment on this at this point?
Sure.
I looked at this and I was amazed that, and I was looking at the 5,000 gallon user per quarter. So the 5,000 gallon user per quarter pays $60 a quarter for sewage, or $240 a year. In the city of Arnold, we have the New Kensington Municipal Water Authority, old lines. Our minimum user, you could be using you could be using 500 gallons and still pay the minimum fee. Our minimum fee in Arnold is $408 a year. That's the minimum, and it goes up from there.
Yeah, I know, my
So-
mother's one of those minimum users.
So even if you have a new rate on the higher end of $60 a quarter, sewage is a bargain here at $240 versus the $408 minimum. So
Oh, thanks. That's a nice frame of reference.
That's
It's all, by the way, it's all,
wait till we get to the garbage.
but by the way, it's also the same for our water. Our water rates are somewhere in the lower third of the valley. I mean, as far as what we pay. But that's because we try hard. Now, here's an interesting thing. This significant increase is because this is another area where for the last 3 or 4 years, unfortunately, the office was not using the 36 million gallons as the reference to calculate the rate. If they would have, the rate would have been increased 3 or 4 years ago. They were just using a historical number, okay? And that, unfortunately, that historical number wasn't generating enough revenues. No, excuse me, take it back. They were using a historical number for the revenues, but they didn't translate it back into the rate. So based on when I was doing this budget for the last 2 or 3 years, the general fund has been subsidizing the sewer fund by about $13,000 a year. So that's another contributor to why the general fund was struggling. The general fund has been struggling in a couple of areas because rates were not calculated correctly. Okay, so this is not because something happened like is going to happen in refuse. It happened because every year they would use $119 as the revenues, just saying that's what we're going to get. But if you would have taken the metered reading history times the rate we've been charging people, it came up short of what we needed to cover the expenses. And now there's no free lunch. So what was happening is the money came from the general fund. In Cheswick, what we try to do is it's our rule that we keep all 4 funds separate. Each one is autonomous. None subsidized as another one. There may be occasions on cash flow where there could be some back and forth. But when all is said and done, each one needs to be separate. So this is unacceptable and we're going to correct it. Okay, now refuse.
Can I ask, with the changes going on with the sewage authority, what the DEP manual, when is that actually going to hit?
She would know.
They said around, around 2021.
Okay, so we have some time.
Yeah.
We
Now
have a
we
little bit of time.
thought about starting to create a reserve,
Mhm.
but why put a burden on people until we know what it is? And then for the members of council, Cheswick is in pretty good shape, and you'll see when we go over the budget right now that one of our biggest debt services is a 20-year bond that we took out many years ago to redo a significant number of streets and water lines. And we specifically took out a 20-year loan because we wanted to pay that loan, that bond off way in advance of when the streets would need to be repaved again and the water lines would be repaved again. So come 2020, 2021, the bond is going to be totally paid off. That's going to be about $200,000 in debt service that we no longer have to pay to the bond. And we can take that $200,000 and start either creating a reserve or do whatever the council wants to do at that time, which could be you know, reduce taxes or whatever you want to do. Probably what we'll do is go after some projects that are long awaited, or we can put it towards the sewage to help people, because their sewer bills throughout the valley, not just in Cheswick, are gonna probably double. And they'll still probably not be in line with.
That's a big problem with every community along the river.
Yeah, well, what's happening is the sewage authority by mandate has to make some major capital investments, and they're gonna pass it on to the users. Okay, so anyway, so where we are, in summary, up to this point is, and we're gonna go over the detail, account by account, but if we would go with the way the budget is set up, there would be no tax increase, there would be no water increase, but the sewage increase would be 49 cents per thousand, from 250 per thousand to 299 per thousand. And the reason I did those two examples was just to put into perspective what the increase was, because 19.6% sounds like, whoa, that's a huge percent, and it is a huge percent. But as far as the consequence is, I mean, any increase has a consequence, but it's not like overwhelming, especially for a minimum user.
$8 a year.
Okay, so as far as refuse goes, now this one's a different story. Well, this one here, we really won't know until we get the new quote. But what we did here was, based on the quotes we got that we ended up having to deny last week because of a technicality, if we took the lowest bidder, it came out to be $148,100. Okay?
910.
Or, yeah, I don't know.
That's okay.
I'm sorry, I'll fix that.
No, you have that under other, and you have it there under refuse.
Oh, I messed up. I'm sorry. Oh, other is something else. It's coincidental. It's coincidental that others, and I'll explain that in a minute. So refuse is 148,910. Thank you, Mike. I was looking at the wrong place. The way to figure out the refuse bill is very basic. On the average, there's 826 users in our community. So if you take the 826 users, you divide it into that, and then you divide by 4, that tells you what your bill should be, or what your rate should be. In this case here, our current garbage rate per quarter is $35 per quarter. We would need a $9 per quarter increase to meet that $148,000 with 826 users. So that's a hefty 25% increase. Now that is a pure pass-through. That's just a pure pass-through. It's whatever we're charged, we charge the users. So our garbage bill, our garbage rates have gone up 25 to 26%, and we have to pass that 26% on to the users.
Does your hauler pick up things like mattresses?
Yes.
Everything.
Everything.
We have unbelievable. My daughter, I have 2 daughters that live in Pine Township. They get 2 garbage cans and 1 recycle. No white product pickup, no mattress pickup, and they pay so much more than us. In our case, it's not only is it almost unlimited, but they'll pick up mattresses, they'll pick up water heaters,
Furniture.
Yeah, Lord.
if they pick up a refrigerator, you just have to have it certified that the Freon or the coolant has been removed. And then this one here, by the way, also includes what was it, Mike?
It was the e-waste and hazardous household materials.
So that's television sets.
Okay.
Televisions, computers, oils.
That did include this.
That includes that.
Yeah,
That's an extra
Yeah, this
service.
is everything
Okay.
in there. So it's a really good deal for this amount of, I mean, it's a hefty increase, but it's anything, you can put anything out. I think certain things you have to give them notice though, right, Mike?
The hazardous waste stuff, the way that it would work, Waste Management was the lowest bidder. The way it would work with them is you give them a call, say, I have items X, Y, and Z, they'd send out a bag that you put it in, or if it's too big, you just set it aside, and they would come and pick it up.
Only thing I'm thinking of like paint or tires.
Paint, all that stuff. Yeah, there's a big long list of it.
Your garbage rates are, again, extremely reasonable. Arnold, we pay $264 a year compared to your proposed higher rate of $176, so you're still $88 cheaper. And in Arnold, you have to pay for everything in addition that they pick up. If they pick up a mattress, it's $20. If they pick up a recliner, it's $20.
Yeah, it's not
And
It's
so
amazing.
we have a big problem with garbage because people are dumping stuff.
They put it out front and then they don't pick it up.
Yeah.
Mhm.
That's what happens up north there too,
Yeah.
because people don't totally understand what you can and can't put out. And they put it out, and the garbage people come by, they don't pick it up, it sits out in front of the house, and
I do also want to point out, I quickly did the math, and I multiplied 35, which is our quarter rate, times 826, the average number of customers, times 4 quarters, and it came out to 115,000, so it looks like we're still supplementing a little bit
yeah,
in the
yeah.
general fund.
Yeah, they're, right. I unfortunately, the office did not routinely go zero base, which they should have.
Mhm.
Okay, and you know, like on water, and I was just telling Guy about it, is we have a interesting thing. We buy 53 million gallons of water a year from Harmer. We meter 36 million. So, now it's not unheard of to have that much loss. One of the biggest places you can have a loss is in old meters. So we're probably going to need, and then the second one is that from the street to a person's water block where their valve is ours. And from the block to the meter could be a residence. But the leak could be leaking before it gets to the meter and not coming to the surface. So, you know, we have 800 and some people using water in this community, and we're probably going to have to go out and really have a comprehensive look for leaks and replace meters. Now, we're not losing money. Everybody's paying for these leaks because what happens is in our expenses, the water that we're buying is part of how we figure out the rate. The bad thing about old meters is there could be a fairness matter here, where somebody has a new meter could be paying for a lot more water than somebody that has an old meter. So we really need to focus on this. But water right now, we're okay, but it's very important that we read the meters and we have an accurate, because sometimes we underestimate, and if we underestimate, we're not going to generate enough revenues, and then we're going to have a problem. We'll either have to have a rate adjustment in the middle of the year, or once again, we do something that we don't do in this community, and that's you end up subsidizing from another account, and we don't want that. So the last column is other. In that other column is, and I'll point this out, there's a bunch of projects. Paul is proposing that in order not to have a tax increase, that the projects be funded by borrowing, by taking out a loan. If we don't, if we So what I have in here is you'll see is a hundred and some $1,000 loan next year if we want to do the projects. Now here, it's kind of an innovative thought because we're well below our debt service limit for the community. If we borrow the money for the projects, what we'll pay next year is probably a half a year of principal and interest, and I have that figured into the budget. Then what will happen is, well, that'll be like a 5-year loan, like our pension loan and our unfunded debt loan that we have. So we have three loans like that. We could put it in the regular fund and not borrow and have a tax increase. Or we could not do the projects. But knowing that in 2020, 2021, that bond issue is done, we can basically pay off all our loans. That could be the first thing we do with that bond money. And then the money we were paying off with the debts, we can put in a capital reserve and buy that new backhoe. Or replace those transite water lines. Or buy a new police car. Or buy a new truck, or whatever we need to do. We'll be in a position that a normal homeowner would love. And that is we'll be ahead of the game, where we can start saving the money. It's like having your house paid off, but then putting the money into a reserve so when you want to go buy your next thing, you don't have to borrow the money, you can self-fund. A rough last year, a rough next year, and a rough year coming up. To not have a tax increase would be remarkable, considering the money we had to borrow to make up for the pension, the money we had to borrow because we had all that carryover from last year, and if we want to do these projects. The beauty of this is we don't have to do those projects. None of them are essential, and you'll see what they are. I'll point out every one of them when we go through the budget. So, you know, if you were all like, hey, this is great, I don't want to see the details, this is what we would advertise. We would say we have a 1.833, excuse me, we have a $246,000, $1,833,246 budget. We would have no tax increase, no water increase. We would have a sewage increase and a refuse increase. And we would advertise, Joe, what we would do is we'd advertise the total amount, and then we would advertise each sub-account and the comparable rates.
Well, you don't have to actually advertise those
You
amounts. You just basically have to say you passed the budget and they can come in and inspect it. You inspect the budget. You don't have to put the details in the paper.
Okay.
Vandergrift just recently put a lot of details in, but I have some other examples. I think Harmer, they just said they passed the budget and didn't even talk about the tax. I just said it's available for inspection.
Well, I think if I look at the flow chart, though, at some point we do have to advertise the impending tax rate.
Yeah, but it's an ordinance, so I think it
Yeah,
complies with
yeah. Our intention to pass an ordinance for the tax rate.
I'll have to look at that.
You know, the best thing to do is I'm going to give you the flow chart,
Okay.
and then you can talk to our solicitor because they're the ones that advise me.
Mhm.
Okay, so the reason I wanted to spend all this time on the summary is, you know, if you've got a $200,000 shortfall, you look at the budget one way versus if things are coming out pretty good, because basically sewage and refuse are like 2 or 3 items, and they're the ones we need an increase in. General and water have a lot of detail, and we'll go over that now, but neither of those would require an increase right now. Okay, so is everybody okay with that? All right, so let's go into the detail. All right, find the right one here. Just make sure I
He
got
has
the
the
right.
big numbers. It's us who can't see them.
I know, that's on purpose.
I thought so.
Okay, so starting at the top, the first thing we're gonna do is go over revenues. Okay, now, the first one is property tax. The way property taxes are computed is, you basically take your assessed value and you multiply times your tax rate, and that gives you your revenues. So the county, I mean, we won't know what our 2019 assessment is until, I think, March. So you pretty much have to kind of figure out where we are. Right now, we're at $102,865,690 assessed value for all our properties. Our current tax rate is 5.85 mils, of which 0.25 is the library tax, so we're at 5.6 mils. If you look at January through October 13th, we've brought in $561,103 in property taxes. I checked with the tax collector of what historically we get the rest of the year, and based on that, now this includes the library tax, we estimate that we'll get about $577,000 in real estate taxes next year. Then now what happens is, the tax period is April through April. So anything you collect from January through March is prior year. Historically, the tax collector tells me we collect anywhere from $10,000 to $20,000 January through March. So we were conservative and we budgeted $8,000. Now, January through October this year was 2,651. We can't figure out why that was. We're trying to figure that out. But historically, it's been around $10,000 to $20,000. So we were pretty conservative. We said about $8,000. The next line item is delinquent taxes. So if somebody doesn't pay their taxes from April to April, then it gets turned over to a tax service and they collect. Historically, you can see in 2016, we got 26,000, 2017, 32,000. For some reason, again, it was low in 2018. The tax services, you know, we got to research it. So we were conservative and we said about $10,000. So property tax, we're saying about $595,000. That's actually less than what we budgeted for in 2018 from a sanity check. And that's about what we think we're going to collect this year. Anybody have any comments? Okay, moving on to local tax. The big one there is the earned income tax. Okay, the real estate transfer tax, that one's really kind of a crapshoot. That's the 1% that you get that we split with the school district whenever somebody comes in and buys property. With the development of the shopping center, we think this is going to be fairly high, but we stayed conservative here at 15,000. You can see in previous years, it's been pretty good. We even budgeted 28 in 2018, but once again, it's low January through October. We're trying to figure that out. One thing that's happening that Paul and the office has done terrific on is they're really cleaning this up. So I think next year, when you do the budget, it's going to be real clear. And there's a bunch of line items, changes that we got to make, and I'll go over that with you.
Okay.
But yeah, as our accounting practices improve, this budgeting process will be less than crap. The earned income tax, that's the 1% wage tax that people pay that live in our community. Half of that goes to the school district, and half of that goes to us. Historically, we've been around 180, 190,000. Through January through October, it's 158,000. That's pretty smooth. So it's estimated we'll get about another 30,000, 30-some thousand the remainder of the year. So that number would be up around close to 190. And then there is a slight increase in the cost of living of about 1% or 2%. So we're figuring 194,000 next year. The next two were pretty much just based on historical data. So those are our two main revenue getters. One is property tax, and the other one is the earned income tax. The next line item is one is business license permits. We're very conservative there. We don't count on that for income. And then the $48,000 cable fee, that's the franchise fee. That's the number Verizon and Comcast. That's the water tower, and that's Comcast cable fee. And that's calculated. That's not done. When you go back and look at your spreadsheets, where sometimes in the right-hand column it'll say see spreadsheet, and if you look at the bottom of the spreadsheet, there's tabs, and that tab will tell you the detail on that. Is everybody okay so far? Okay. The next one is fines and forfeitures. It's just based on historical numbers. That's pretty much fines and citations and things like that. The next one is interest, rents, and royalties. We're figuring nothing there. Okay, so this next one is gets pretty interesting. Okay, most of them are funds that we receive from the state or the county, based on different types of taxes and things that they do, and then they pass it on to the communities. And in each case, Ian called them up and said, what are we getting next year? So one or two is based on historical data. So what we have there is public utility real estate tax for $700, state aid liquid fuels, 54,000, about 55,000. Act 77 sales tax, that's that extra 1% that we pay in Allegheny County. State pension aid, $14,100. A lot of these are pass-throughs, by the way, because that'll go right towards paying for our pension. Act 13 gas well impact, no, we don't have any. Yeah, $800. Foreign fire insurance, that's just another pass-through that we pay off our casualty insurance for the firemen. So that's $127,000. So when you look at that, that's not like revenues that most of this isn't revenues that we go, oh boy, we can spend this on whatever we want. Most of it has to be used you'll see later on for specific things and expenses. Okay, the next one is called department earnings. We have that $125 for sale of accident and theft reports. That's when people come into the office and say, hey, I want to get certain information, and they just have to pay the cost of it. Building permits, based on Ian talking to Brian Clark and O'Reilly's and that, these are fees that people will be paying. He has a calculation for this, $10,000. Okay, contracted snow removal, PennDOT. We're kind of hostage. PennDOT says, will you do Pillow Avenue and Pittsburgh Street? We say yes. They don't ask us how much we want to do that. They said, we'll give you $3,600. So, anyways, so we kind of look at this as we would do Pittsburgh Street and Pillow anyway, so at least we get some money for doing it. $6,000 for labor for loading salt in Springdale Township. Looking at historical data is rough here. The counting was not very good on this. So I went to Kathy, and Kathy worked with the borough workers and came up with this estimate of what we thought we would get.
Does the office bill Springdale Township for that labor?
Yes, and we need to be diligent and we need to be proactive. It's always been reactive, and from a cash flow standpoint, Kathy has enacted a proactive now. You pay up front, not after we do it. The next one is, so that's labor for loading salt. Now, sale of borough salt, we're gonna have to fix that. Yeah, that should be higher. I'll fix that. This is the salt that we buy for Springdale Township, and this is the salt that we buy for ourselves. So I'll have to fix that. Sewer rents, that's what we would get at 36 million gallons. That's the shortfall. Okay. So that number will go up if we raise the rates. The next one is refuse, garbage collection. As Mike pointed out, you know, they just used 119,000. That wasn't based on anything. It was just 119,000. Oh, excuse me. The 115,000 was the one where they used historically. But when you use the 36 million gallons, it comes out to 90. So that's where we've been subsidizing. Really, it's 20-some million, 20-some thousand a year. Refuse, that's the shortfall again. It should be up, up around the 140,000. Grant for recycling, I don't know what the heck that is, but it's $100. So.
With that e-waste program, that would help us potentially receive
more. Okay.
Because of that. So they keep track of how much gets recycled. So many pounds that you recycle helps you out in getting grants.
Right. So, wow. That 40,000 is right. That 40,000 is what we get from Springdale Township.
Yeah, because ours is
Ours is 20, so we paid 60,000. Wait. I think we could get a.
My ears coded in there.
I think we could get a cost reduction if we put a time thermostat. Hey, Joe, here's a note for you. We gotta do something about the thermostat.
Yeah.
Programmable thermostat.
It's pretty warm at the last meeting.
Yeah.
All
Usually
open
it
window.
leaves 2 pounds up.
I was wrong, Kathy. That 40,000 is right. That's what we get from Springdale Township.
Right.
That's the number you gave me.
Yes.
Okay. the $275,960, that's the amount of revenues we would get in water using 36 million gallons times our current admin fee plus the usage fee. That's what the algorithm comes out to be. So that's $544,000. Does anybody have any concerns or thoughts on any of those? Are we too conservative, or? In most cases, we usually figure less than what we really think we're gonna get.
Do we know with the sale of salt, have we factored in, we ran into an issue with sales tax, didn't we? I remember that was something we initially came across with Ian.
Well,
Is
we're
that-
not gonna have an issue with sales tax anymore.
We just do.
We're not selling,
Good.
we're not selling to anybody that's a business.
Okay, so
In
we're not,
Springdale Township,
That's it.
we're not doing the school district, and we're not doing Curtis Ray,
Okay,
and we're not doing Polino.
Sewage.
So what happens is Springdale Township is part of the COG.
mhm.
It's just they're buying their salt through us. They would get the same rate as us.
Okay.
Yeah, we can't charge them anything more.
Okay,
Salt went up $1.64 a ton too, so.
But what we get, if you bought salt right now, it'd be about $100 a ton. And we're getting it for around 70 some a ton, so it's super,
Yeah.
super. The next one is miscellaneous revenue.
Frank, why do you have underwater, water sales 267,000? It's on the budget, but yet up here, it's 329,
As far as the revenues, you mean?
as far as revenues.
Let's see.
See, in your like little snapshot there, it had 329, but when you go to the water sales revenues, it's only 267.
Okay, let me see, hold on 1 minute now.
Okay.
275. Meter, water sales. So what did it come out to be, Joe?
Well, you had, I guess I'm looking at, the underwater on this little snapshot where you had 325,000 for expenses and 329,000 for revenue. But when I look here at the budget, under the water, it looks like it's only showing 267,000. It's like an $80,000 difference.
Yeah, there's okay, there's $54,000.
Oh, I didn't turn the page.
Well, if you go down to, let me go on and then I'll explain that, okay? And, that happens from, in the water expenses are some projects. Remember I said we were gonna borrow some money?
Okay,
And the plans are to borrow $110,000
okay.
in order to cover water expenses in water that are projects. So of that 110,000, 54,000 would be from that loan.
Okay.
So that what's is the number 329,960?
Yes.
That's and I'll show you that. But I'll show you. We're going to hit that in just a minute.
Okay.
Okay, so now moving on, let's see, where were we? Miscellaneous revenues. Okay, now we'll answer your question. We have, as we come down, we have, the first thing we hit, and we never showed this, Joe, but we're gonna put it into the budget.
Mhm.
We're gonna show getting the tax anticipation loan in and putting it out.
That's fine.
Okay.
That's normal procedure.
Yeah, well, we never did that
Oh.
before. So it was like in and out, and it never showed up on
Right.
the budget, okay? So that's that 125,000, so that's almost a pass-through,
Mm-hmm.
okay? Now, the next one, you see that proceeds of a general long-term debt. It's 393,100. Okay, that 393,100, there's $110,000. That $110,000, and I'll show you how, there's like another column, but that $110,000 is allocated based on the expenses below. And so 54,000 of that $110,000 would go into water, 50,000 would go into the general fund, and 6,000 would go into sewage. And you can only use this money on capital projects. When we looked into a loan, you can't borrow money for operating, but you can borrow money for projects. So we had to make sure that in our plan, that $110,000 was only being used for planned projects. And I'll point those out as we go through the expenses.
And with no payback of that money
Half
in.
of, we're figuring we're gonna take it mid-year, and it's amortized, so we figured 110,000, 5 years at 5% interest. It came out to be about $1,200 a month.
Oh.
So we figured 5 months of $1,200 a month, and I'll show you that down
Okay.
below. And by the way, since this is the first time for you too, we can have a separate session and go over this in a lot more detail, because I'm sure you have some.
Oh, this is overwhelming enough at this point.
Yeah, well, I know. I've been doing it for 36 years, and I was overwhelmed doing this, but because I never did it in this detail, but Ian left, so somebody had to do it, so I'm a little bit apprehensive, to tell you the truth. Okay, so anyways, so that all adds up to $1,790,371, which, if you remember from our summary, came up short. And where it came up short is because there wasn't enough revenues. I don't have worked into this, the rate increases. So right now, the budget is not balanced unless we pass those rate increases. Then the budget will be balanced. Okay? Does everybody kind of understand that? I'm really going fast, so and you know what? If you go home tonight and you have any questions, we can have another meeting. Just don't be timid, okay? Because there's a lot to digest here. Okay, so the next thing is the next thing is expenses. All right, so now we're talking about money we're going to pay out. On that copy there, if you see those little numbers, like the 1, the 0.8, the 0.01, the 0.05, the 0.05. At the top, unfortunately, I failed to print the headings, but the first column is G, general. The second column is W. The next is S, which is sewage, and the fourth one is revenues. In some cases, an expense, say the borough secretary works on the general fund, the borough secretary works on the water fund, the secretary works on sewage, and the secretary works on refuse. So based on basically asking the secretary says, oh, I work about 80% of my time on the general fund, about 10% of my time on the water fund, and maybe 0.5% on the sewage and the refuse. So we take those percentages, and that's how we allocate to the various accounts the expenses. So it's not here, but on your spreadsheet, If you go way over to the right, you can see where we'll take the secretary's $48,000 and we take 80% of that and we put it in water expenses, in the general fund expenses. So we actually are allocating certain expenses across the funds rather than having one fund eat it all, because that would be unfair. All right, so anyways, that's that, but for right now, we're not gonna focus on that so much as just the total number. So we have salaries of elected officials. That's zero base. That's the salary paid to the mayor and to the council persons.
Frank, just a note on that email I had. I only mentioned the back pay in case that was a factor.
From what I understand, that's gonna be taken care of next
I
month.
think it's about 8,000 or 9,000. That's the only reason I mentioned it.
No, it's figured into
Okay,
that.
good.
That it was deferred until the end because
I was just trying to be cautious.
I understand.
That we had that in
there's, you are an elected official and you never have to apologize for anything you ask if you, each one of us, so don't worry. The next one is the salary of the mayor. The next one is the salary, or the fee that we pay to the auditor. Again, I don't know why it's so low in 2018, but that's about what they figure we're gonna pay. Salary of the secretary, which is obviously too low, but no comment. The salary of the assistant secretaries, we have part-time help in the office. The next one is the salary of the janitor. The next one is the compensation for the zoning officer. All of these is based on a fee. And by the way, in December or early January, Joe will prepare a resolution that will have all these salaries, all the benefits, everything on it. And of course, we'll help you put that together. But all of this has to be passed once a year. The next one is hospitalization. The secretary and the borough workers get hospitalization as full-time employees. And that's the estimate. The next one is the borough secretary gets a 401k. And we'll hook you up, Joe, with the planning group that
That's fine.
provides that. And then you can elect whatever you want to do with that.
Right, the mix.
And then, part of that is the fees are paid for and everything, so it's just whatever you match. The next one is Social Security. Once again, that's just a formula. Social Security is 7.65%, and if you know Excel, we simply take the 7.65% times everybody that has to pay Social Security and Medicare, and that includes the borough officials that is taken out. So this is over and above what you pay. The borough has to pay 7.65%. Next, excuse me. Yeah, right. The next one's unemployment comp. Once again, unemployment comp right now is 3.7%.
That's a good rate.
Yeah. Oh, is okay. Boy, finding these things was a pain in the neck because once again, this was not done zero-based. It was done based on historical. So now, Joe, what we're trying to do is find out whatever the heck the rate is and multiply it times the salaries.
It can be as low as, the lowest I've seen is about a 2.5. It can go all the way up to about a 9. So 3.7 means you have a good record.
Okay, right, and that can change. It depends. Same thing with workman's comp. It really has a lot to do with. Okay, so next is office supplies, $4,000. Computer related. This one looks like it kind of got pulled out of something, but you're going to see a lot of stuff on computers. In fact, if you wanna do what I did, every time you hear the term computer, write that number down and add it together. Because it really shows you how much computerization costs you these days. You know, for most of my tenure here, we didn't have a computer. So right there's $3,000. That's just for normal things. Operating supplies for the mayor. Oh, the mayor's not here. Did he call you or? No, she was here for police. Okay, professional services. That's pretty much consultants we're using in the office. Late fee and charges. I'm not sure what that is. I guess that's when you don't pay a bill on time. Telephone charges. That's $431 a month. That might be one thing we can take a look at. I can see where maybe we would go with somebody like Comcast or something like that. You're probably seeing a lot of the ones here that you can kind of go after just to.
That's, there's a lot of competition out there for telephone
Yeah.
services.
Okay, the next one's advertising and printing. This is whenever we advertise an ordinance or whatever. Though sometimes the advertising is built into the project. So let's say, for example, we're going to pave a street. That wouldn't go in, that wouldn't be here. That would go as part of the cost of that project. This would be normal council stuff. Advertising the budget, advertising openings in the office and things like that. The next one is public officials liability insurance. This one here, guys, is what we pay to be bonded, so that when we get sued, which we get sued, this pays for the insurance to cover us, so that you don't have exposure as a public official if you get sued personally. If something happens out there and somebody decides not to just sue the borough, but to sue you personally, which can happen, that's what this is. Workers' comp, that's, Joe can probably comment on this, and we're paying about 7%.
That seems about, I'd have to look at the individual rates, you know, in terms of,
Yeah.
it varies with the office.
You know, right, but that's really, again, based on your performance. If you have a lot of people getting hurt at work, you're gonna pay high. If you're a safe group, then this goes down. Publication and dues, this is really high, but part of it is we pay dues to the Allegheny Valley North Council of Governments. We're a member, and that comes back to us pretty big, because as a member, then we become eligible for county-wide grants and funding. So there's 13 communities in the Allegheny Valley North Council of Governments, and they all pay that rate. Conferences, trips. This is low because nobody goes anywhere. Actually, it's encouraged that new council members go to classes. So Kathy, Gyla, if you want to go to, there's a lot of classes out there on, on being a public official. Go to them. The last one is computer upgrade. This is for a new server. This would be a server for both, a server that would be used throughout both the police and the office. It would be one consolidated server. I think this is high because, I don't know, we'll have to see if Joe wants the same situation. Ian wanted a laptop to take home. So this includes a server and a laptop. So we budgeted for it, but this is a place where we could cut some money or whatever. And that server, the quote was $8,000. So this is kind of, I didn't mess with it because I just went with what Ian had here. And this is one place where we're really conservative.
Is postage built into this anywhere?
Is what?
Postage.
postage.
Yeah, I can just tell, I know the stamps are going up by 10%, so that's hitting me.
Is that under office supplies?
I would guess, I don't know where postage is.
Okay.
It's
I don't know
somewhere.
how much we pay for postage,
Yeah,
but
but it's somewhere.
it's
but-
going up 10%. So
Yeah, but, and by the way, if you get expenses based on your being a public official you should turn in an expense report.
there is.
Okay, next is law. Boy, this was really high, we cut back on it, but,
We skipped tax collection.
yeah,
We skipped tax collection.
oh, I'm sorry, tax collection, okay. Property tax, most of this is paying our tax collectors. Property tax supplies, this is supplies for our tax collector. You can see over there stamped envelopes and whatever. The next one is delinquent tax collector Jordan. That's their percentage that they get. So remember up above, we said we're gonna collect taxes, delinquent taxes. This would be their fee. So I just went with what Ian had there based on historical. And then property tax collector, the property tax collector gets 2%. So I just basically have an equation there. Whatever we say we're going to get, I multiply times 2%, and that's what's here. So if we get less up above, we're gonna pay less down here. Okay? Everybody okay with that so far? Okay. Then next is law. First we have $2,500. We changed this, the note on the right should say, assuming one insurance claim. We think this year we ought to, every year we get sued. Some years more than others.
Yes.
Usually they're very off the wall.
Yes.
Unfortunately, our insurance, anyways, this is the $250, $2,500 deductible. So we're assuming one claim next year. The next one is miscellaneous legal services. This is for special counsel. Counsel, in this case here, we may have some special counsel to do some negotiating for us. But that should be pretty much done by the end of the year, so I think this is high. Retainer fee for the solicitor, we pay the solicitor $300 a month just to be our solicitor. Other services, the solicitor, there's $8,000 in there for if we get sued, special look at this, look at that. And then there's $10,000 in there if we decide to go for the codification, which is a project. Now, why that's in there, I'm not sure. I guess they're gonna be involved in reviewing the ordinances.
I thought that's what we paid to that company that Ian had bought a quote for.
That's what I think too.
He did.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know why we'd be paying them so much if we're paying our solicitors so much too.
Well,
I mean, they would have to review it, I want their eyes on it, but.
we've got a balanced budget if we, and this is, you see this column in, this is the second time we've hit something in this column in, okay?
Mhm.
That 13,000, now 10,000. These are all the things that are gonna add up to that $110,000, which we would take out for the project capital loan. So if we don't do it, we would just take out less of a loan. So it's zero-sum game for the budget, other than paying those 5 payments at the end of the year might go down a little bit. So let's say we decide not to buy the computer upgrade, we would take less of a loan out. Let's say we decide not to go for the codification, we would take this $10,000 out. And then Mike is right, because down below you're going to see some more money for the codification. Moving on. Okay, is everybody okay with that? This is really,
Yeah.
this is really conservative, I think.
It does seem though, under other services, the last item, that we're well under where we've been previously.
Well, that's because we've had some major lawsuits in the past.
Okay. Yeah, is that more in line, I don't know if you know, is that more in line with prior historic figures?
Yeah, right. So we were kind of going zero-based here, and it seemed like in prior years, it was around $7,000, $8,000, $9,000.
Okay.
But we have that 6,000 up above too, which we think is high. So,
Was it about 20 hours?
is it really? Holy mackerel. 300 an hour, jeez. So maybe it isn't. Okay, so do we want to earmark that one as maybe not high enough?
Yeah, I would, just all the things that we're contemplating, like,
What would you like to see it be?
for one, I would feel more comfortable if we assumed 2 deductibles, just to be safe.
All right,
And then I would probably say our other services, at least 10, if not 12, just getting up there, just gives a little more comfort.
okay, then we'll look at the end and see if we still have a no tax increase budget.
I sort of think that the 2 deductibles would be good. I think we did that this year.
Yeah, it's just, you have to be careful not to over-assume to where you have a tax increase
Yeah.
because you're going over-conservative. That's the only thing. There's other places where we're conservative. So, you know, it's kind of like things
Yeah.
balance out.
Right.
Yeah, my thoughts are there's just a lot of balls in play. And this
Right.
is Really.
That's why I don't-
See the points.
That's why I don't get too worried about $1,000 here or there, because it's if we make those increases that we just said, we're gonna have a $4,000 problem.
Mhm.
Okay, just keep that in mind.
Yeah.
Good.
Let's make note of that and then.
Yeah, that's all I wanna say is, and I'm just telling you from an intimate knowledge of this budget that, I wouldn't worry too much about that because it's going to be covered other places. I really think revenues is really conservative. I think revenues are going to bring in more revenues, but especially, see now EIT now, where in the past it was collected by the office, it's now collected by Keystone. And besides being collected by Keystone, if you work out of town, well, wherever you work, Keystone collects it. It's taken right out of, it's withheld in every paycheck. And Joe's familiar with this, right?
Best thing the state ever did was
Right,
mandate that.
right. So, you know, like the earned income tax, that, if you would go up above, just to give you an example, that very top thing, the real estate tax, if you took the 102 million and you multiplied it times our tax rate, it would come out more around 590 to almost $600,000.
Mhm.
So we're figuring we're not going to collect everything. So just letting you know,
No, I understand.
but the input is good. Yeah, I think you could be right. The thing is another thing we need to do, and I hope Joe brings the discipline here, is that if you're going to overrun any line item in the budget, you can't just do it. And we have been. You need to make a motion at the council meeting to transfer funds from one line item to another line item. And that's the rule. But unfortunately, in our office, in the past, it's just arbitrarily just done things. So if we do that, we'll be on top of things. Okay, so anyway, these are little things we'll talk about. These are all Paul inspired as he's cleaning up how we work administratively. Okay, so we were at the legal, right?
Yeah.
Okay, we'll make a note on those couple ones, and at the end, can you be kind of the, let's go back and talk about something?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, so where were we? All right,
Administration.
We're in administration 406.
406.
Where's your postage?
Yeah.
Oh,
Well, it's not
yeah.
that much.
Okay, there's the postage. And then computer hardware and software. So there's another $5,000. But I guess we're buying this Link software, which I don't know what it is. And Swift Reach, I guess that's the, make a phone call and it goes out to all residents if we have an emergency. And RTR maintenance, does anybody know what that is? I just took at gospel what the office said they needed for computer hardware and software. So that's $5,000. That's actually lower than what we've been spending in previous years. But once again, you can't tell what's in those previous years. It might not even be computer or hardware or software.
Could that emergency management expense be part of the capital borrowing?
Where's your, which one is
Oh,
that?
that the, on your computer software, emergency management, the 5,000. Does, could that be part of the borrowing? As
I
opposed-
think this is mostly maintenance.
Oh,
This is, this is like your maintenance fees and, calling some consultant up to come over and fix something. I think you're right, Joe. If it was new hardware.
yeah, I thought it was new hardware.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. I think if it was new, then it would be that. So that's a great question. Nothing evaluative of what you just asked.
I mean, we have a good friend in Arnold now, he's an IT specialist, he's reasonable, and he's a director of IT at Kiski.
Well,
So-
if I have probably about 30 actions, and that's one of our actions is
Okay.
we want to reevaluate that whole thing, who we use for a consultant.
Right, well,
And if you have somebody and you're in the office,
I guess it all depends on what the problem is.
yeah, right. So you can make some judgments, you can decide. I mean, that's administrative.
Yeah, that's.
Our goal has always been that this council should not be administrative, it should be legislative. And we have too many council people running things on a day-to-day basis, and that's rough on the council people, right?
Right?
Right.
I'm looking at you because you do a lot of that. And that's not why you ran for council. You ran for council to represent the people and to be legislative and to set up the administrative. But because of circumstances, we don't have a public works coordinator, we don't have an office. All of us are doing, like right now, the borough secretary should be running this budget meeting, but we don't have one until
Monday.
Monday.
Okay, so moving along, but that was a good question, and make a note to yourself. Those are areas where you want to make improvements. It's fine with me. Okay, moving on, we have this is engineering. We do water testing. It's required, and that's about in line with what we pay. We have a retainer for our engineer, $30 a month, which is modest, $360. Then we have $6,000 for other projects, and then $10,000 for a major project if we want to work on putting in a new interconnect or a new valve in the interconnect. And that would be pretty much water. Then we have, so that's what we have for engineering. So again, that $10,000, if we do the project, that would be paid for by the loan. If we don't do the project, it wouldn't be paid for by the loan. So then now we don't have to unnecessarily or we don't have to conservatively raise taxes, and then if we don't do the project, then that $10,000 is sitting in our bank account and, okay, municipal building. We used to have the janitor there, we moved that person up above because then, just it's easier administratively. Supplies for the building, I guess $100. Utilities, this would be gas, electricity. Why is it water? Do we charge ourselves for water? I don't think. I'll have to check on that. We're charging ourselves for water.
Then you have to bill yourself.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that just happens to be in the title there. That would be really dumb.
Having a
Maintenance, $1,000. So there's about $8,300 just to take care of this building. Okay, now police. We're budgeting police as if nothing changes next year. That's why I wish Dan was here. So let me run through this. Now, as you know, we're working on a merger. If the merger happens, there would be a significant cost improvement. We're figuring could be $100,000, right, on an annual basis. But we're not sure when the merger would occur. So for next year, we're assuming we're going to have a part-time chief until we merge, which we still have to hire. So that $22,000 is for that part-time chief, and that's based on 4 hours a day, $25 an hour, 5 days a week. Oh, excuse me, I did figure 44 weeks. I figured the merger would happen in 44 weeks.
Yeah, what is that? 10 months?
52, yeah, divided by 4, so 11 months, well, 10 months, yeah. Salary full-time, but salary part-time, this is based on the $6.75 an hour that we pay them, 8 hours a day, 3 shifts a day, 7 days a week, 52 weeks, and let me see, and the reason I use 90% is sometimes we can't get a part-time police officer. So when we can't get a part-time police officer, we have to pay one of the ones working overtime. So what we did here is we said 90% of the time we're going to have 24/7 coverage in this borough by part-time people, managed by a part-time chief. Before, if you remember, we had our chief is retiring, but our chief worked 1 shift, and then was also a patrol person. So this says we will have full coverage, 7 days a week, 3 shifts a day. But 10% of the time we can't find a part-timer. And you'll see that in my calculations below for overtime, okay? All right, so then there's no hospitalization because our chief retired and we don't have anybody full-time. We still have to pay the pension obligation because we still have a pension plan with people on it. And same thing with that state aid, that's a pass-through. We showed it up above, $9,400, and we're showing it down below as being paid into our pension plan for our police officers. Social Security and Medicare, once again, that's 7.65% times any salaries we pay. So that's going to be the chief's salary, the part-time patrol officer's salary, and any overtime we pay. Unemployment comp, once again we have a 3.7% rate. And I'm not sure how that works with part-time people, but I guess,
They're, on that, they're only subject to the first $9,000 of wages. So I see the number there. It could be a little lower, I'm not sure.
yeah, I think this is pretty conservative. This is
Okay.
based on if you had full-time people, and
Right,
this is, it's
right.
probably,
Right,
this is one
it
of the.
could be, it might be a little lower because it's the first, they've been raising, it was then 8,500, I think it's 9, it's only now on the first $9,000 of wages and it
Okay.
stops. So you
Well,
may have a little wiggle room there.
Yeah, so you know, this will be good when you start doing the
Mhm.
budgeting, because you'll understand that better than me. Salary for training, I think that's a little high. But we have $2,500 for, I mean, we've only spent $2,200 for the whole year so far.
We generally have kept most of the same people on for the
Yeah.
rest of this year. And talk of,
Yeah,
I've heard things
Well,
and
what-
whatnot, so.
yeah, but I don't wanna make a self-fulfilling prophecy.
No.
So. Okay, longevity, that's, we just use that account, that's that's the paid vacation we have to pay Bob when he retires, at $12,000. So that's really a one-time thing, but I just put it under longevity because, that was an open account, okay?
Just sick days, not vacation.
Oh, he has paid vacation, but you're right,
That's that buyout.
yeah, that's sick, that should be sick days, I'll change that. It's not vacation, you're right, he's gonna take his vacation. Sick days, all right. I should have picked up on that, that's something, not that I'm making excuses, but that's something to, have to be a little bit. Full-time, there won't be any full-time overtime, there won't be any shift differential. Okay, part-time overtime. There I basically took the $6.75 an hour and figured that 10% of the time worked by part-timers will be overtime because somebody doesn't report and somebody has to cover, okay? Healthcare deductible, that goes away because we don't have anybody that has healthcare. Gas, oil, and grease, that's for the car. Material supplies, Danny's reviewed this, so, you know, I haven't got any negative feedback on this budget. He did, in fact, he did respond to me and basically said that he didn't have a problem with it. But I don't know, I wish he was here so he would say that, because you're getting it third hand. Tire and tubes, 1,500. Telephone, that's probably goes away, that's the cell phone for the chief. So, that's conservative. Insurance, this is the liability insurance, if we get sued. So, if a police officer gets sued, so this is basically the insurance premium. Workers' comp, it's 6% was what we were told. The traffic light maintenance, that falls under police. Maintenance of the vehicle, we got an old car. This is a balance job here. We probably should be, we're getting close to needing to buy a new car, but if we're gonna merge, probably don't need a new car, because it'll be part of the merger.
I would I'm just thinking about it. We might want to make note about the previous one, the traffic signal, because that probably would remain with the borough, and make sure that in our next, should we merge, that is reflected in the budget somewhere.
Somewhere else.
Yeah. It's fine, it's right now, it's under police, but it,
Or it goes in the merger.
maybe.
Okay, you're the head honcho there, so, okay. Well, I will make a note of that. I have a place where I have actions. Let me call that up.
Is the old car really bad?
Well, we have two, we actually have two cars.
We haven't got a new car in a couple of
See,
years.
Arnold was able to, just recently, they got a $50,000 grant from Senator Brewster, and they used it, they bought a $30,000 SUV, and the rest is supposed to go for body armor. So, I wonder if Senator Brewster has any more money.
You know,
Is he your senator over
No,
here?
I'm
he's,
not sure, but
it's
we
really that
do
Schaefer.
have senators
Oh, okay.
and we do have House of Reps.
Or,
And we
Williams.
definitely should be calling people on those types of things.
Well, somebody went to Senator Brewster, and
I know, well-
they handed me the check, and I thought that's
We need,
pretty good.
we need the same thing here.
Yeah, I mean, we got Germany right down the road, and we don't seem to be there for
Okay, so I made a note of that then.
I'll
My-
plan
my-
to visit.
My only concerns, Frank, regarding this is that if we're looking at certain phase projecting going on the lines of a merger, that's not entirely within the control of the people that are sitting here, just because we're depending on.
That's why we budgeted, the only thing I budgeted for 44 weeks, you know, talking to Paul, I mean, do you take exception with that 44 weeks?
I would feel more comfortable if we just said, you know, because this is not something that, you know, we're budgeting depending upon what somebody else might do. And that's kind of also the same regarding the car. If we don't, I don't know where we'd be at in needing time. That would be my only concern, is that I don't want to find us in a bad spot because
Well,
we're
that
planning
could
to plan
go
action.
under those capital projects,
Okay.
where we could borrow the money for the car, and then, you know, we would pay for it over the next 5 years, versus what we should do,
Or you can lease.
or lease.
We've been leasing.
Well, we've been leasing to buy,
Okay, oh, okay.
even, like our current truck is leased to buy, and then we buy it for $1.
Okay.
So it's kind of like you're borrowing, you pay it over 3 or 4 years, but then you keep title then.
Right.
Versus, you know, on some so that as a result, your lease cost is a little higher
A little
because
bit.
it's basically semantics. It's basically a loan, and then you get the title at the end. But I don't know why they call it a lease. I'm not sure. But I see your point there on the car.
And then my only other issue is that we have a meeting on Tuesday where we're going to be first meeting with the union. I have no idea what's going to come from that, but that could have impact.
That's
on
a
some
new
of these.
input. Yeah, that's a new input.
Yeah.
What we're doing is, we've got to keep moving on the budget so we can pass it. If new data comes forth, as Joe knows, you're allowed to make modifications to the budget after you advertise.
I don't know if we'd even know by the end of this year. I mean, who knows how long that could take, but it's something that could. I don't know how you plan for that either.
I don't know how you plan for all that.
Yeah.
So that's why you just assume that you're going to be status quo as far as your police go. I can tell you this though, we pay on the high end as far as part-time police go. And if something would go to arbitration, it would be really hard for it to go higher when many communities are paying $12 and $13 an hour, and we're paying $16.75 to be competitive. If you even go up above the Springdale Township, they're not paying that high. So we went along with our chief and our mayor in order to get good quality part-timers. We're on the high end of what part-timers are making. So, you know, that's pretty conservative. So, yeah, let's say there is some kind of negotiation going on with the union. I would really be surprised because arbitrators look at what's happening in your area wide and usually make a decision based on that. And I know that from experience because I used to go to the police negotiation.